For me to make fun of Avi and Naphtali or not?
Is it an Aveira? It could be a mitzvah. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to do tshuva from a mitzvah? Maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyways, okay, so we're on the bottom of Lamed Tesam Beis. So we're discussing all different ways of what do you call it? Of freeing slaves, right? So all different types. So we left off yesterday with the one we left off with is if somebody tells a slave that we didn't leave off with yesterday, but let's say he makes his slave hektish. So we said many say that that's considered freeing him because you can't possibly make a slave into hektish. Fine.
That's what he ended up.
Allah is not like Reb Shimon, even though we had 5 shittas that said halacha is like Reb Shimon, but then we said, okay, but they ain't halacha Reb Shimon, right? Okay, so now we have another way of freeing a slave. So Amar Reb Zeira, Amar Reb Chanina, Amar Reb Ashi, Amar Rebbe. Eved shenasas bas chayrin b'fnei rabbi. So if you have an eved who's not allowed to marry a free woman, right? That's what we've been discussing. An eved cannot marry a woman who's free until he gets totally free, right? So if he does and he marries her in front of his baal, right? On Tamar Aleph now Yotzel Lecheres, he goes out free. Why? Because if the boss, the owner, would have stopped him from being over on an Isser, right? Again, an Eved has to keep halachas. Eved Kanani, even though he's a guy, has to keep halachas of Yiddishkeit the same way that a woman does, right? And also he's got to make sure that this B'nai Ben Chayrin or Bas Chayrin doesn't go over on an Isser. So if this Baal is going to the Chasana, right? The Baal is going to the Chasana, and the Chasana is his Eved marrying a free woman. So must be that he freed the guy before. Otherwise, why is he going to this chasana? He should have put a stop to it. So must be he freed him, right? By him going to the chasana, must be he freed him. So unfortunately, the practical application of this is what can one go to a chasana, and it unfortunately comes up a lot, of a relative or a close friend who's marrying a guy, right? You go to the chasana, shows your approval. The Gemara here, that's what the Gemara is saying. If the boss was there and he saw his Eved getting
I'm just a relative. I'm not the boss. That shows that I approve of it.
Well, so that's the question. Is Dafka the boss? Because you could say
maybe if the parents went. Maybe if the parents went, it would be an approval, but not if I go.
Why? If you go, or the question comes up, can you say congratulations when the guy gets engaged to a shiksa, right? So even though if you're saying congratulations, that means that you're approving it. Now, is there an isser of you approving, like you're saying, David? But if the boss is saying it, so then maybe Taka has a lot of ramifications because maybe he freed her, right? Mashen Kane, if somebody else approves of it, okay, so what, right? Okay, I'm saying it does come up. It's hard to say that it's usher.
Yes, it does come up. It does come up Now I don't. When I worked in the city, it was caused some big problems for me. But Baruch Hashem.
Yeah, I had it with my sister-in-law's wedding. So I spent 5 hours in the car.
There you go. Right. Yeah, so anyway, so that's the shaila. So it's hard to say that it's usher, but lemaisa, if especially the more religious looking you are, the more approval they say. Right, look at that, How many of us have eaten in a restaurant because we saw a frum guy walk into it? Come on, let's call a spade a spade. Right? You see that going on. So then anyways, okay, so that's what went on over here. So the Gemara is thinking that it must be that the guy, the Yid, is never going to approve of this chasana unless it was legitimate halachically. So must be he freed the slave, and that's why the owner went. Right? So Amar le Rabbi Yochanan, Kol kach yesh biyadcha. This, you have so much in your hand, right? Meaning, this is a big chiddush. Bani Shaina, but I learned something else. Meaning you learned this from Rebbe, and I learned something else. Let's say the guy marries his own shifcha. Right now, his shifcha he's not allowed to marry because she's a guy. Right? Whatever, she's not a guy, she's a yid, but she has to be freed. But let's say the guy himself marries her. So Rameir says it's a good kedusha because it must be the guy's not going to be over on an isser. It must be he freed her. She's not mekudeshes, right? Because lavdavka maybe he would be over on the isser, right? So he's saying this that he went to a chasana of that's a much bigger chiddush than he himself marrying, and he himself marrying is a machlokes. So how can you say that if he just went to the wedding of his eved, that would be enough to prove that he freed him? So my answer is he's talking a different case where the Gemara is going to discuss in a few lines, because basically the Gemara says that if a eved puts on tefillin, must be he went free, right? Because why is he putting on tefillin? An eved has to keep the same mitzvahs as a woman, right? So if he starts putting on, which means he doesn't have to put on tefillin because his mitzvah says man grama. So if he starts putting on tefillin and the boss sees it, so then must be the boss freed him. So the Gemara there says no. It's somewhere where the boss actually put him on the tefillin, right? And that's why we're gonna assume that he was mashacher him because he actually put him on the tefillin. But his stam was standing around when he put on tefillin. That would not be enough. So Hanami here too, Kasharabba Hisiyo Isha, we're talking about where not he was the shotgun. Not only did the master go to the wedding, right? He actually was involved with the actual wedding preparation or shatchanas or whatever it is. So therefore, we're going to assume that a guy is not going to do an isser that way. So Gemara asks, okay, is it possible that for his eved he's not going to do an isser, but he himself is going to be over an isser? Right? Meaning, according to what we said before, there was a machlokes whether he's over on the isser or not. Whether if he marries his own shifta, it's an isser. Right? So we're saying that maybe he would do it, meaning for his eved he wouldn't do it, but for himself he would do an isser. How does that make sense? Right? So the Gemara changes pshat. Take this shtar, go out, go free, and then use the same shtar for me to marry you. Right? So he's saying he's taking two things out of this shtar. He's giving the shtar to the woman and saying, you're going free. And by the way, with this shtar, let me marry you. Right? It's pure romance. He frees her and then he marries her with the same shtar. Right? Rebbe Meir Savar Yesh B'Lashon is that Lashon Shifra. That Lashon, that terminology can be used as a terminology of Shifra, of freeing her. Rabban Sabi Ein B'Lashon is that Lashon Shifra, and this Lashon is not a Lashon Shifra. So that's basically the machlokes. Again, it's talking about not where he just went to the wedding, or where he married the woman straight. It's somewhere where he married the woman by giving her a get shikhr, and then he married, right? With that same get. Fine. Amar Rabbi Shmuel. Now we discuss the interesting din here. So Amar Rabbi Shmuel Levi Evet sheniach tefillin b'pnei Rabba yotze lecheres. Like we said before, an eved who puts on tefillin in front of his master, and that means he goes out free, because why would his master let him put on tefillin if he's still an eved? If he's an eved, he's an isha. He's like an isha. He's potter. Right? Now we're going to get back to that. Go ahead. What are you saying?
I mean, there's some chashuva people that they let ladies put on tefillin.
Oh, so you're asking a good question. Rabbaran's asking.
They're like the women at the wall. They put on tefillin so that he's asking good. Yeah, I was going to ask that.
Right? Or what about tzitzis? Or what about anything lulav? Right? If he sees the eved doing lulav or tzitzis, so also that means he's free. Well, women could shake lulav and esrog. Women could sit in a sukkah. Right? Women be'etzim could wear tzitzis, and they really could wear tefillin if it wouldn't become such a hot button topic. Right? But tefillin maybe not, but tzitzis really they could wear. Right? It just became a hot button topic, so the person said no. But either way, so Rabbi Shmuel Levi says that we'll get back to this when we see the Tosfos. But he says that if the master sees the Eved putting on tefillin, it must be that he's free. Meisvei, but they asked the Kasha from a Brisa, Loivim and a rabbi, if the master borrowed money from the Eved, right? Now, what does this mean? So, what's the chiddush? Why can he borrow money from his slave? No, what it means is a master owns the slave. He wouldn't borrow the money; he just take it, right? Because anything that the Eved got, macha kana Eved kana rabbi, whatever the Eved gets goes straight to the master. So he wouldn't ever borrow. But this that he borrows must be that he freed him. Or if he made him an apotropos, right? Which means an apotropos means that he makes him in charge of his land. So if a rabbi makes his eved into an apotropos, that means he's machshav him a lot. Must be he freed him. Or he put on tefillin in front of his master. Or he read 3 psukim and he got an aliyah in the shul from his rebbe, in front of his master. He doesn't go out. He does not go out. So we see a stira. Shmuel Levi says he would go out for tefillin, and here the Bryce is saying that he doesn't go out for tefillin. Grada, I had a shayla. A rabbi texted me. Of course, I didn't remember. It's a beferish and mechaber. He said they gave Kayin only 2 psukim last week in the shul. They only gave the Kayin 2 psukim, and then they called up the Levi. So now what? 2 psukim is ma'akim. So it was like in the afternoon. So I don't know exactly whether that shayla was practical. And I just told him. I told him it's beferish, and I have no recollection. That's it. That's it. He said okay. He was fine with that. But anyways, you got to read. That's what it means here. 3 psukim. Either way,
Rachman, maybe it was his kohen who wasn't wearing a jacket, so they only gave him 2 psukim.
Doesn't count, Taka. Doesn't count if the guy's not wearing a jacket. Yeah. Anyway, so that's the stira. Right. So the Gemara answers. Like we said before, right? So where the master put him on the tefillin himself, that much he's not going to, right? Right. So he actually put him on the tefillin. So there, that much he's not. That must be if the guy's actually putting him on the tefillin, must be that he's free, right? Now look at the Tosfos. Very interesting Tosfos. Right? Now, what were we saying before? This was really Rabban's kasha, but what were we saying before? Why do we think that the master freed him? Because he sees him doing a mitzvah to say shazman groma, right? So look at Tosfos. So and not because he's not doing an isser, right? This answers your kasha. Did I freeze? Am I good? Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. Because he makes a bracha on them. So it can't be that maybe the master saw him putting on the tefillin and he put it on the tefillin with a bracha, right? Because Ashkenazim, right? Iran, that's for you, right? Ashkenazim make a bracha on mitzvah. Right? This is not for Svardim. Svardim, the women don't make a bracha on mitzvah shazman groma. He's saying, but maybe the master saw the guy making a bracha on the tefillin. That was the issue, right? Maybe he's making a bracha on the tefillin, and that's a bracha of a tefillin. The sukkah lulav shofar, the common mitzvah say, right? The sukkah lulav shofar, many mitzvahs say shanoshim bevarchas that women do make a bracha, not like the Svardim. Svardim don't make a bracha. Ashkenazim do make a bracha, so it couldn't be that that's the issue. It must be because avodim are not rogil to put on tefillin. You love the shachar, meaning it sounds like from the Tosfos. I don't know. It sounds like from the Tosfos that maybe women would put on tefillin. He's saying avodim don't put on tefillin, right? And memela, since avodim don't put on tefillin, and this guy has his eved putting on tefillin, or he sees his eved putting on tefillin, so must be he freed him. Otherwise, he'd make a macha.
I don't know if you're forced to say that to Nushing, but because it's just a aura on avodim. Avodim don't put on tefillin, and that's just the minhag. Avodim don't put on tefillin. I don't think you can. I say, well, then therefore maybe we can do. Okay, well, maybe Katanim do. But Katanim don't. So I don't know if you could say it like that. If from Avodim don't put them on tefillin. That's the minhag by Avodim. They never put on tefillin.
Well, Tanim put on film. The ones who put it on before Bar Mitzvah, Tanim are putting on film. No.
Yeah, but there's an interesting thing that one of the Daf Yomi, the Lakewood one of the Daf Yomi said that Ramosha in the Dibros Moshe says that even avodim would not make a bracha on mitzvahs. Even if avodim do mitzvahs on groma, they don't make a bracha. Noshim can make a bracha, avodim don't. Right? Because they're not full-fledged Yidden yet. So they're not right to make a bracha. Right?
But if they have a din of ladies, so they're doing what Jewish ladies do.
No, I think that's just how we medama them. We medama them like a lady, but that doesn't mean that they are like women. They don't have to keep neither. I mean, especially
good. Thank you very much.
But they're not. So just saying they get mitzvahs like a noshim. It doesn't mean that they are totally medama like noshim. So. Just they have that's something they have in common. That the Cleveland mitzvah is the same way as
that's what, so, all the ladies in the Talmud Gemara were Sfardim, so none of them made brachas. There's no Ashkenaz ladies in the Gemara. There was no minig Ashkenaz.
I thought it was the other way around. There were only Ashkenazim. There never was Sfardim. What?
What are you drinking?
What? What you say? Anyways, but this Taisus is a kasha on Reb Moshe, because this Taisus clearly says that they do make brachas, right? So I think they answer. I don't that it doesn't mean that they should make a bracha. It means if they made a bracha, so they made a bracha, but they're not supposed to make a bracha. That's the way Reb Moshe would understand the Taisus. Not so easy to understand, but okay. Fine. That's the shtickle practical of tonight's stuff. Right. Back in the Gemara, yeah? A few lines below where that Tosfos ended. So if a guy, now again, we're continuing with all the different ways that Avodim can get freed. If somebody says when he's dying, I have this shifcha plainis, she's a great lady. She worked hard enough under me. I don't want her to be meshubed anymore after I die. Now, why he couldn't just free her himself, I have no idea. Why did if he had such rahmanas on her, so then just free her, right? Why is he waiting for his kids? Okay, it's a kasha from a mice.
He wanted to make it into the Gemara. No,
it could be all these winners over here.
He had a good thing going. He wants to stretch it out as much as he can.
Yeah, I guess he doesn't know when he's dying, so he needs her till. Yeah, you're right, Rachman. That's probably shot. So Ayishtaber Balachar Maisi. He says, don't let her be a slave after I die. We force the Yarshim. The Kaisim will get shikhr. And we make them write her get shifra, and we make them free her. On the phone of Rabbi Ami Ravasi. So Rabbi Ami and Ravasi said to Rabbi Yochanan, Rebbe, very interesting, Rebbe, right? Here they called him Rebbe. Sometimes it just throws me off. I'm not sure if this thing's missing from the Gemara or not. Like all of a sudden now they're referring to him as Rebbe. Right? Aren't you Maida that her kids, if this shifcha would have kids, her kids would be Avadim, right? So why can't let the children, inheritors, why can't they keep her as a ship? Why do they have to free her? So at least if she has kids, they'll get to keep her kids. Meaning the father said, she worked hard enough under me, I don't want her to work hard anymore. So now we're saying that we force the Yarshim to free her. Why do you have to do that? Let her just not work. Let her sit on the beach all day, right? Not work. But then when she has kids, at least the Yarshim will be able to keep the kids. Meaning the point is like, why do you have to, they're asking, why do you have to actually free them? It's like, if somebody said when he was dying, this shivcha made a lot of nachas for me. Yasala kairas ruach, then make for her nachas ruach. I guess nachas ruach, kairas ruach, and meaning keep her happy. Kaifinas a yarshin baisim la kairas ruach. We force the yarshin and we make her kairas ruach. My timer. Again, the same Gemara. Mitzvah l'kaim divrei ames, but this one says a different shot. This one is saying because it's a mitzvah to be mekayim divrei ames. Not the first shot was that we forced them to free her. That's because halachically we're to do it. This one's saying no, it's not halacha out this. The halacha is out mitzvah l'kaim divrei ames. Since the guy now died, so we're gonna have to be mekayim. Fine. That's that. Now we're on to the next one. Omar Ameimar, Hamafkir Abdoi, I say Evan England Takona. So Ameimar is a big chumrah, right? If a guy is mafkir is Evan, so that we had in yesterday's daf, he could be mafkir Evan, right? Then England Takona, that Evan has no Takona, and he cannot marry anybody. He can't marry an Evan because he's free, and he can't marry a Yid because he can't get a shtar, right? So I'm after Abda also have an England Takana my time. And why doesn't he have a Takana? Why can't you give him a get shikhr like we said all the other sheep say? Gufay like because once the owner is mafkir him, so his guf he wasn't kind. The only thing that the owner still has is the isser that's part of him, meaning the isser that he can't marry a free woman. You can't be makna somebody something having to do with isser. Isser is not something tangible. Meaning, right now, when he freed him and made him hefker, so now he made him be his own guy. So now he's his own person. Right? The only thing that he still has attachment to is the isser of him, the isser of him to marry a free woman. Right? And an isser, you can't be makna. You can't do that. So therefore, the man is in no man's land. So Amar Ravashi, Ravashi said, Amar Ula. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Rav Chia bar Av and Amar Rav, Echad Zeh ve'Echad Zeh Yatzel L'Cheres V'Tzarech Get Shikhr. Both of these, right? Meaning, the first one is talking about a hektish, and the second one's talking about hefker. Right? This was 2 days ago's daf. They both go out l'cheres, but they need to get shikhr. So you see that the get shikhr does help to free them. So Malay. So he said, what it means is that he needs a star, but there's nobody that could give it to him, right? It's an interesting thing. What this sheet is saying is that he needs to go free. Somebody has to free him, right? But there's nobody that could do it. So Mamela, he's stuck in no man's land because you can't, once you mafkir him, again, let's just be clear. If he would have freed him in the regular way, so then he becomes free from Isser and from being an Eved, Givaldim. But here he didn't do that. He did it as hefker. Once he makes him hefker, he can no longer do both. Right? So those that say, if his mafkir is evident and he dies, then the Eved doesn't have to cut him. Meaning the first shot was that he's mafkir him, and even if the master stays alive, there's no takana. This one is that if the master dies, my time, right? Because the once he was mafkirim, the guf is not owned by the master. Isura hu the gabe. The only thing that he has an issa. The isura lebrei loimaris. Who's going to free the guy, the slave, in order to enable him to marry a yid? The master can't do it. He's dead. Right? The sons, what they yarshin? They yarshin the slave. You can't say they yarshin the slave because the father made him slave hefker. So what are they yashining? A slave that you have the rights over the slave to give him a get in order to enable him to marry a Jewish woman. That's not tangible. You can't yarshin that. There's no Yerusha for that. Right? So the second shot is a little bit more understandable. But the first shot is that stam. Even the owner, once he makes a hefker, he can't free the slave. And the second shot is no, only if he dies you can't do it because his Yarshim can't do it. Right. So now Rav Dimi came and said the name of Rav Yochanan, and the other Gemara so that's a stira, right? The other Gemara said from Rav Yochanan. So which one is it? Does it work? Does it not work? So the Gemara answers the Rav Dimi to Usu. Good Peretz. This is almost Peretz's favorite Peretz. He was a mistake. That's all. Right? Rav Dimi made a mistake. So Gemara says, Amar Le, my Turusa. What are you saying is a mistake? The loy Amar b'lashon shikra, that he didn't say it in a lashon of freeing, meaning the master, when he freed the slave, he didn't say it in a lashon of the proper terminology. He didn't use the proper terminology. Amar b'lashon shikra hachanami. Right? That's mashma that if he would have said it in a lashon shikra, then Rav Dimi would be correct. Right? So you see that Rav Dimi holds that you could do it, and then that would work. Yeah, and therefore it is a stira, meaning if Itaka used the right terminology, so can you free the slave or not? So Rav Dimi would be right that you could, so it's a stira. So Amalei, Anakad Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda Svirili, he says, I hold like Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda, meaning Rav Shmuel bar Yehuda in Rav Yochanan, who says that you can't do it. And the meaning, so it basically comes as a machlokes in Rabbi Yochanan whether you can free a slave just from the Isser Shabbat. Right? Okay, so it comes out that that's a machlokes. Fine, a similar story. How Diskarta? There was a city, right? The Abdi. There was a whole city of slaves that was owned by a Yid. There's Daven Leivik Bechavim that they went and they sold that city to Goyim. Kalu Marvasa Basrai. Then the marvas is plural for mar, for the masters. They all kalu means they were done. They were finished. The second meaning the goyim that bought these slaves from the Yidden died. Also look at the Ravina. So they came from the Ravina. Amrlu, and they said to him, Zilu Ahadru Abnei Marvasa Kamoy. Go back to you guys want to all go free now, right? So go back to your original master. Right? And they'll write you a get of cherusa, meaning a get shikra. They'll free you, right? So you see that even though they sold the slaves, still they have some sort of bias over them, right? So that's why they're saying to go back to the original owners to free them. So for somebody who makes his eved hefker and he dies, he has no takana. Didn't we just say that? That if a guy makes his evet hefker and then he dies, there's no takana. So how can you say here that there is a takana to go back to the original owners? Rav Dimi says, I go Rav Dimi, and holds that you could write a star. The Rav Dimi too, but we said that Rav Dimi had made a mistake in what Rav Yochanan said. What are you saying was his mistake? That he didn't use the right terminology of shikra of freedom? But mashma, if he did say Velashon Shikra Hachanami, he would be correct. Fine. The Ilchasa Ravina, and the halacha is like Ravina. Right? And therefore you would be able to free the slave, even though he was already made hefker. Fine. Next story. Ahu Avda, there was an Eved, the bait trade, that belonged to two people. Right? Another interesting story. There was an Eved that had two owners, and one of them got up and he freed his half. So now you have our classic Chatzi Eved, Chatzi Ben Chayrin. Right? He had two bosses. One guy freed him. So now he's half baked. Right? He's half free, he's half Eved. So what do? What did we say yesterday's daf? What do we do in that situation? We force the other guy to free the Eved. Right? So Amar Idach, the other guy said, Hashta Shami bi Rabbanan. The Rabbanan are going to hear of this. They're going to make me lose the Eved because they're going to make me free him. So again, this guy realizes that the Rabbanan are going to make him free his half of the slave. He doesn't want to lose his half of the slave for no reason. What does he do? So also Akmi lebnai katan, what he does is he gives the slave over to his son, who's a katan. And therefore they can't start up with a son who's a katan. Because when a katan owns things, Bezdin cannot force anything on a katan. The guy has to be a gadol. So Shachar Rav Yosef Rei the Rav Lakamei the Rav Papa. So Rav Yosef, the son of Rav, sent in front of Rav Papa, Shalach lei, and Rav, meaning he sent him this problem. He said, "Look what this wise guy did. We were about to tell this guy that he has to free his half of the slave, and now he outsmarted us, and he gave the slave over to his son, who's a katan, and now we could do nothing." So they went to Rav Papa, and Rav Papa said, Shalach lei, he said, Kasher asa keni yasa loi. What he did, we're going to do to him. Kimula yashav lo b'roishay, and what he's deserving is going to come on his head. Meaning, we're going to give it to him good. We're gonna scam this guy back. This guy tried to scam us. We're going to scam him. How? Anan kimlan b'yanuka the mekarva daita l'gabizizi. We know that a kid always mekarva daita, his das can go to money. Meaning, if you put coins in front of a kid, it's gonna attract him. Right? So minale apotropos. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna give him an apotropos, because that's what you do for a katan. You give him an apotropos, right? Ooh, mekarkish leizite. And he's gonna put the coins. We're gonna knock some coin on top of the base. Now we're gonna knock some coins in front of the kid, and the kid's gonna say, "Oh, I want that money." So say, "You want that money? We're gonna sell us your slave." But he can't sell his slave because he's a katan. So what does he need? He needs apotropos. Because of legita de cherusa al shmei, and then the apotropos is going to write a get of cherus on his name, and then we are going to get this guy freed. That's basically what he said. We're going to do is we're going to pull since he gave it over to a katan. He said we're going to pull a shtick, and we're going to get this katan to want these few coins, and then the apotropos is going to be forced to sell the eved from the katan.
If a katan wants to do something, all he needs to do is he has to hire an apotropos, and he's good. He could do it without anything, right? Meaning,
yeah. Well, the katan can't hire that. I mean, I don't know. I think Bezdin has to hire the apotropos.
The Bezdin can hire the apotropos against the will of the father. Isn't the father the apotropos for his own son? And they can just come up and say, the father has no rights. We do.
Yeah, he gave it over to his son. That's what
but what is his son? But what's the son mean anything? He's a cotton. It's meaningless.
Well, the father has shiltus over the son. He gets how does Bezdin have shiltus over the son more than the father?
That's a standard thing you do for your Simon.
But the father's still around. It doesn't make how did it become a Yosem?
Right. So I think that's what a papa meant, that he's scamming him. He said, we're gonna appoint this guy an apotropos. The Maisa, you can't let a kid have control over things. People are gonna rip him silly. Right?
You mean to say that just like the father that did something corrupt, so we can also do something corrupt? We'll make it apotropos where we normally couldn't make it apotropos. We'll call him a yosem, but he's not a yosem.
He is a yosem. He's a yosem because he's a kid.
The father's still around, though.
I don't know. Rashi says you have to make sure you give him an apotropos so that nobody comes and rips off the katan. Rashi in the bottom, last line on Amar Aleph. He says you can't have a katan owning things, owning karka, owning slaves. It's going to be a scam.
I'm asking, where does the karka have shlita to do with to get an apotropos to go against the will of his father?
Not going against the will of his father.
Maybe he is.
No, that's what they're doing. They're scamming the father. The father thought he was a smart guy.
But it works. It's not a scam. It works.
Why does it work? Who says the father has control over the kid? Who says the father has control over the kid? Right?
1 second. We know a father has control over a kid. We just finished with the Nadarim. He can wipe his Nadarim. He has control. He does have control over
Not when he's makna the kid something. Not when he's makna to him.
And he's not his apotropos? Let's say he didn't makna anything. Who watches over the kid?
That's what Zev is asking. So I think that's what Rapapa is saying. We could scam the father. The father thinks he's the apotropos of the kid. No, we'll appoint an apotropos for the kid. I think that's what it's saying.
Isn't it that the father basically just gave it to himself?
Well, that's what the father thought he was doing. And Papa is pulling the wool. They're pulling the wool over. Pulling the rug out from under him. That's what it is. He's pulling the rug out from under him, and he's saying, "You know what? You think you're going to be in charge of the kid, and you just scammed the system because now the kid owns the eved. We're going to tell you, no, we're going to give an apotropos, and then we're going to dangle money in front of the kid. The kid's going to want to sell the eved. Then we're going to convince the apotropos to do it, and that's going to be the end of that." Yeah, that's that. I think that is Rapapa's chiddush. I'm assuming that he could do this, right? Otherwise, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how it works legally.
There's no
Parents-
reason not to. Why not? The purpose of giving an apotropos to a yosem is that Bezdin.
It's not a
has the best-
yosem.
Can you hold on a second? The purpose of giving an apotropos to a yosem
Yeah.
is that Bezdin should have the best interests of the kid in their hands. The
Right.
fact that he's a yosem is irrelevant. He's a cotton with property. A cotton with property. We want the best interests of the cotton in Bezdin's
You
hands.
can't take away his father's rights. Rachman's right. What do you mean?
The father just messed the kid up. The
It
father
doesn't
took his own rights
matter.
away.
It
That's what he's
doesn't
saying.
matter. It doesn't
Why not?
matter.
It doesn't matter. Let me ask you something. If a
Wait,
guy
wait,
wants
all
to
of a
marry
sudden you're
off his
arguing with your papa?
if a guy wants to marry off his 8-year-old son, right, or his 8-year-old daughter, he can do it.
You can't marry off his son. No.
His daughter, he wants to marry off his 8-year-old daughter, he can do it.
Yeah, this
That's
guy's
a
a
pasuk
boy.
in the Torah.
This
That's
is a boy.
That's a pasuk in the Torah that allows that.
So what if he is makna his ever to his daughter? Not to
But
his
it makes
son.
it's the same thing. Bezdin making up a truppas because they have a cotton with property. We want the best interest. The father obviously doesn't have the best interest. So what's the Yosem have to do with anything? The father just stuffed him with something that he really wants himself. That's not the best interest of the kid. That's the best interest of the father.
Not a kid wants to get back at the father. He says, you know
Forget
what?
the kid wanting to get back. The kid doesn't want any trouble.
Gershon. Let's say the Cleveland Bezdin comes to your house and say, we don't like the way you're raising your kids, and they take your kids, chas v'shom, and take your kids away from you. That's good because they decided that Gershon doesn't know how to raise his kids, so they took your kids out of your house. So that you like?
If I was provably harming my kids, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you mean? But you gave your kid an Evid. Yeah, I guess all you did was give your kid an Evid.
No, he didn't give his kid an Evid. He was mugging his kid the Evid so he could use it.
Good, but
He didn't
Lamaisi
want to
gave his
lose
kid
it.
an Evid. What's the loss? What's the loss to the kid? There's no loss to the kid. Let's say the kid
There
sells it for a
there
can of
is.
soda.
When he uses the Evid, he's now stealing from his son.
Let's say that. One second. Let's
He's
say
a
the
gunner.
Evid. One second. Let's say the kid sells the Evid for a can of soda in school by snack time.
Good, he sold the Evid.
Good. So now what's the loss?
Good deal.
No
That's a
loss.
good deal.
The
It's a
father
good
can't do that though. The father's a gunner if he uses the Evid.
Why
That's
is
true,
this
but
different
the
than
kid-
when? Why is
So
this
the father
different
is
than
definitely
business
not
people?
interested in the best thing for his son.
His accountant
When
told him
bu-
to do it.
yeah.
He's saving money for the whole
When
family.
when
And
business
this way he's
people
able to
put
take
all
the
the
kid to
assets in their
Cancun for
wife's
Pesach
name.
because he saved $5,000 in his taxes. No.
Yeah.
What's the
Yeah,
big
Baron,
problem?
why is
All of a
it
sudden it's a
different?
problem that the
Why-
father did something to his kid. That's a big problem. Why is it a problem?
Yeah. Go ahead, Reb Dave. Go ahead.
Why is this different than when a business person puts all the assets in his wife's name?
That's right. No.
Well, I'm just asking, you know,
His wife's a katana.
That could
She
be
doesn't
too.
care.
doesn't matter. That's why they
possible.
can't touch his wife's stuff. She's not in the business. It's not her name. So they don't point to, you know.
Yeah. Anyways, okay,
I mean,
it's good.
legally, if she decided to go use it, she could get rid of it. And
She
it's
could,
hers.
yeah, she could get rid of it legally. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Rav
So the
Tzviak,
son
you
could
don't hear
also.
the taina.
I hear the taina. No, I hear the taina. But clearly, Rav Papa held that Bezdin can appoint an apotropos to a kid, right? If a kid, listen, if a kid, it seems like a kid has property. Bezdin is achroi to make sure that this kid doesn't get ripped off. They got to appoint an apotropos. Now, they probably could have appointed the father as the apotropos, but they could also get another apotropos. That's clearly what Rav Papa is saying. They're allowed to. They don't have to necessarily allow the father to be the apotropos.
Why can't Bezdin do it? Why can't Bezdin do it?
They themselves can be the apotropos. Yeah, they're appointing an apotropos. They're not doing it. They're appointing somebody. Right? Yeah. Okay, let's see back. So Torah Banan. Ha'imar asisi plani avdi ben chayrin. If a guy
See,
says,
Yaakov, most of the
Yeah.
people, the Olam in the share is too young, but Ferraro, the first lady to run for vice president. So they found her husband was a big lawyer in Queens, and all his buddy judges were getting paid off by him, and he was making him apotropos of everybody in Queens who needed an apotropos, and he was making money hand over fist. Yeah.
yeah, that's Well, it could be it was this guy who was also pulling scams, right? Giving avodim off to his kid, right? Okay, whatever it is. Tanaraban. I'm an Asisi Pliny Avdi Ben Chayrin. There's a very interesting machlokes here. The guy says, I made my Eved Ben Chayrin, meaning normally the boss says, I never freed him, and the Eved says, he freed me. Right? That would be the normal machlokes. Here, the machlokes is the opposite. Right? The boss is saying, I freed him. Right? I'm an Asisi Pliny Avdi Ben Chayrin. I made Pliny my Eved free. Asi Ben Chayrin, or he said, I'm sorry, I jumped on, that's really the next case. But there's three different terminologies. He says, I made my Eved free, or Asi Ben Chayrin, he was made free, Harehu Ben Chayrin, or he is free. So all those three terminologies are Harehu Ben Chayrin, they're good enough, and they all go free. Esenu Ben Chayrin, but he says, if I'm going to make him into Ben Chayrin, meaning in the future, Rebbe Rebbe says he's kinda, meaning he's kinda himself, and he's now Ben Chayrin. And the Chum say he's not kinda. Rabbi Yochanan says all of these, whoever you hold like, the guy only becomes free if he has a star too. Fine. Okay. The guy says Nasati Sada Plainis LePlaini. The guy says I gave this certain Sada to Pliny. The Suna LePlaini, or it was given to Pliny. Harehi Shaloi, or he says this field is his. Harehi Shaloi, then it is his. Etnana LePlaini, but if he says in the future, and they all need a star. So same exact Gemara, except the first case was by slave, the second case was by star. Fine. Tanarabanan, another case. So I'm a Sisi Pliny Avdi Ben Chayrin. A guy says, here we're talking about this is the opposite of what you would think. A master says, I made my Eved a Ben Chayrin. For who Omer? But the Eved says, Lo Yasan, he didn't. He must have been treated very well, this guy. Like the Eved saying, he never made me free. He never made me free. Either that, or maybe he didn't want to keep mitzvahs like a full-fledged yid. He was very happy to keep it like a woman. He says, no, don't. I'm not interested in going to davening. Right? Don't give me the tefillin. So that they're having a fight in the opposite of what you would think. So there we say, there we have to be chayshid that, yes, maybe the Eved didn't know he was made free, because what the Baal did is the Baal gave him over to a third party. And we had this a few times, that you could be makna something to somebody through a third party. It's zachin l'adam shaloi b'fanav, right? So therefore, he could have done it through somebody else. So therefore, the guy goes free. But kasavti v'nasati, but he says, I wrote a star that he's going free, and I gave it to the Eved. But who and the Eved says, like kasavli, but like nasanli. He didn't write it to me, and he didn't give it to me. Haidas Baldin, then he was, Haidas Baldin is like 100 Edim, and therefore he does not go free, because the Eved is Maida, that he was never free. So Haidas Baldin, it's like 100 Edim, and therefore he doesn't go free. Now the Gemara is going to say the same case by a field. If he said, I gave a certain field to Pliny, but who and he said he didn't give it to me. That you gave the field to this person through somebody else. But if he says, I wrote a star that I'm giving over the field and I gave it to him, and he said, I didn't write it and I didn't give it. He didn't write it and he didn't give it to me. Dummy, it's Haidas Baldin is like 100 Edim, and therefore he is not kaina. Fine. Now, who eats the fruit? Yeah, meaning who gets to eat the fruits of the fields? The question is, what's the shaila? It's whoever owns the field is the one that gets to keep it. So Rav Chisda Amar Noisen Oichel Peiros, the one who, meaning the one that gives the field, he eats the Peiros, because we just said Haidas Baldin K'mei Edim, and the field still it belongs to the giver. Rabba Amar Mishalshanas Peiros, and Rabba says we give it to a third person to watch it until Achiyov Elio. Right, so the Peiros goes till Achiyov Elio. So, and there's no machlokes who gets to keep the Peiros. One is talking about by the father, meaning the guy who was supposed to receive the field. That's talking about That's talking about where the guy. That's the guy himself. So he knows. So he's trusted to know exactly what's going on. But if it's Habibra, but if it's talking about a son, the son, he knows that his father never was kind of the field, or he thinks he knows, but we have no idea. Maybe Taka, maybe his father was kind of, and this guy Yashin. So since the son doesn't really know what's going on, so in that situation, we'd give it the payers to a third party, and then the third party would hold onto it. Okay, let's just do a little bit tighter. So this next Mishnah is very difficult to understand without the Gemara at all. So let's try it. Evet, let's at least do the Mishnah. Evet shaso rabbi apaitiki. So an apaitiki is basically it's sort of like a fancy mashkin.
Fancy what?
A mashkin. It's like a fancy mashkin. Meaning you tell the guy, I'm borrowing money from you, and this particular specific thing is going to be yours. Right? So Eved, so now he made his Eved into the apaitiki. So now what does that mean? Does he mean to sell the Eved? Did he mean to free the Eved? Right? So Eved shaso rabbi apaitiki la'acherim, to others, the shichraru, and then meaning he said he's in a apaitiki, and then he freed him. Now I don't know exactly what kind of scam this is, but basically he says to a guy, "Lend me some money. If I don't pay you back, this is the Eved you're going to get," and then he goes and frees him. And even frees the Eved. Right? Okay, so Shuras Hadin in Eved Chayev Klum. According to the basic halacha, the Eved doesn't have to pay anybody anything because he was made to go free. Now there's going to be a machlokes. Who are we talking about? Not to pay the first owner, the second owner, meaning the lender, the guy that borrowed the money, right? Elam may tikkun ha'olam, but because of tikkun ha'olam, kaifin as rabbi. We force his master, and the child is which master? The first one, meaning the borrower, or the lender, and he make him ben chayr.
Wasn't the borrower let him go?
The borrower let him go. Yes,
okay,
but the question is, he was an apaitiki to the lender.
Right, I understand.
So maybe he didn't belong to the borrower anymore.
So then his shichros should be questioned altogether. Nothing.
Correct, exactly. So that's all part of the cholent that will be tomorrow's daf, right? So because of shtar al damam, and then he has to write a shtar on his money, what he's worth, right? Meaning the Eved has to write a shtar.
Why? What did the Eved do it?
Well, so we're gonna have to see that in the Gemara too. What did he do? Because he's walking out scot free, and it could be he's ripping off the second owner, the lender, right? Because the lender he was an apaitiki for the loan, and now all of a sudden we're saying that he's walking free, right? Shimon Gamliel says that he doesn't write it. He doesn't have to write anything. He just has to free him, right? So yeah, so it's gonna be quite confusing, but I'm sorry, I'll try and get it straight by tomorrow, but that's basically what happened here. Is that a guy lent money to B. B said, "Here's my Eved as an apaitiki," which means that basically you're going to take your payment from this Eved if I don't pay you back. Then he turns and he frees the Eved. So now what's going on? Is the Eved free? Is he not free? Does he have to be freed? And does he have to buy himself, etc., etc.? It's a whole mess. Okay. Anyways, the others should have themselves.
Why don't you just force the guy to pay him back?
Oh, yeah.
The first guy to pay him back elsewhere. Why don't you just force the first guy to pay him back and leave the Eved alone? That's it. He freed him, and he took away the mashkin.
Imagine